Okay, we're here talking to my father, Max Price, and we're going to be talking about his father, and his name was
William Roland Price.
And back during World War II, he was an engineer for Boeing Aircraft in, you said Wichita Falls?
No, in Wichita,
Kansas. Sorry.
And he worked in the experimental division.
And he was a metallurgist. And he was a metallurgist?
He learned to do metallurgy, yes. But he went in there because of his knowledge of things.
Engineering,
yeah. He was in the top engineers.
Right, and he helped develop the B-29.
Yes.
So, and he was in a group of 8 engineers that were the elite of that area.
The 8 were top secret. My father was one of 8 out of 30,000 employees.
I guess now you were born in 47.
47.
A little bit after the war, but some of your younger siblings, I guess they had soldiers at the house during World War II.
During World War II, I wasn't born, but they had, he'd be delivered home in a staff car with a sergeant.
And I guess they had men guarding the house.
Yeah.
So he was up there and definitely somebody that didn't want to
24
fall.
hours, 24.
I guess you said your mother would give a list to a soldier and he would go do the shopping?
Yeah, they had it all set up. She just push a buzzer and make a buzzer ring in one of the cars that were guarding our street, and then you just swing right in. What can I do? What can I do for you? Okay, pick up a grocery list. Okay, take a message over to somebody and send a message to so and so or something.
Okay. So, and anyways, I want to talk to you about it, before you get old and pass away. You have secondhand knowledge of what he saw, and I guess in 1947, the year you were born, they brought part of the Roswell craft to him to look at.
Yes.
And what did he tell you about that?
He said it was D-shaped. It had some scratch marks on it where it skid across the sand, because it was actually a crash, but it didn't total the machine. It just sanded it on the bottom because it landed in the desert out there. And they had a big truck pick it up and haul it to Wichita, to the experimental division where my father worked. And then they took it in there and they would check it all out and try to x-ray the metals and see the exact metallurgy of the structure. What was the
composition?
Composition.
I guess he had one machine he called the jigaboo that he put it on to check to see it flexing.
It was a vibrator. It would count to the millions of how many flexes.
Right, and it had no metal fatigue.
The stuff that was from Area 51 would not flex. Any other metal known.
Right, you're thinking about how they eventually, I guess they took this thing to Area 51. But at the time,
they got stuff sent to them from there.
Oh, okay. I'm not sure of the history of Area 51, but I guess he looked at the metal and he saw hieroglyphics on it.
Yes.
Okay. Well, anyways, you can just tell me what you remember him telling you about.
He said there's Egyptian hieroglyphics, and he did not have a book to decipher them. Nobody had a book except E. Wallace Budge was developing it. He was a kid at the time.
Right. That's before they found the Rosetta Stone, I think. I'm not sure. I'm not sure when they found the Rosetta Stone.
I don't know.
But he said it was Egyptian-looking.
Yes.
Hieroglyphs.
Yeah.
So
it highly resembled hieroglyphics that were on the pyramids.
Now,
and the writing.
Can you kind of try to remember what he said the metal did in your hands and stuff?
Well, the metal was extremely light, like real thin aluminum. and he said you could bend it real easily. And then this other metal come off, looked almost the same, that would not fatigue. You could put it on a vibrator machine that would give it 200 bends a minute, and it would never fatigue. And that's what they used on making the aircraft better for the fighters when they go into dives and pull
So
out.
you're saying that some of the engineering that we're using now came from this craft,
Yes,
and that your
quite
father
a
helped
bit
with
of it,
this.
yeah. Gave us a jump start. We were sucking hind tip behind the Germans, and we never knew when they were going to win the war or not, because they
Right.
knew about the hydrogen bomb, and that's something most people didn't have any idea unless they worked at the Manhattan Project. They would not even be on the same page.
Right, yeah, and we
If
did
they
get,
worked on the Manhattan Project out there in New Mexico, they'd go, "Hey, shut up.
mhm,
We don't talk about it anywhere." You know.
right. So I guess
Except,
you had told
in
me,
their 80-foot underground bunker is the only time they'd start talking like we are,
right.
and communicating and.
So you grew up with your father telling you about the things and stuff that he'd
Mhm.
seen. You telling me that some of the metal it was really thin, and you could just fold it like paper over and over,
Mhm. Never
And-
fatigue.
and never fatigue, really lightweight. Anything else you'd like to talk about with his experiences that he shared with you? Boeing Aircraft engineer at that time.
Well, he was out of 30,000 people. There was only 8 people, men, in experimental division. So that puts him pretty much at the top of the list of intellect. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
He was one of the brightest there. His friend, I can't think of his name right now, but doesn't matter. His friend never made it out of the workshop, out of the wood shop. He was just making things out of model things. My dad was in there making things, you know, and figuring angles on rotor blades and stuff for the turbines, for the jets and stuff. Because they did have that from the Germans.
Right. So he was helping reverse engineer
Reverse engineered.
from the Germans.
Yeah, the German Messerschmitt 262A Swallow, first twin engine turbine jet fighter. And it had a speed of about 700 miles per hour climbing. And it shot 20 millimeter rounds from the nose. There were 3 on each side of the cockpit, 3 cannons that were 20 millimeter or bigger, because they had rockets too that they could fire. But they'd fire the 20 millimeters and take down B-52s all day long. But that came from some of that Roswell engineering, being able to.
Yeah, the Germans didn't have the Roswell stuff, but your father did.
Yeah, he had the
Have
knowledge
access
of
to
it,
it.
yeah.
And that was in 47. Of course, 47, that's after the war. So
Yeah.
They,
So,
so I just wanted to get an interview with you here about, what your father had shared with you about what he'd seen from the Roswell craft there at Boeing Aircraft. And that was in Wichita, Kansas,
yes.
at the Boeing facility that was there then. I don't know if they have anything there now. I think they might have just moved up to Washington or something.
I think they went to Seattle.
Yeah, somewhere around there.
Yeah. Dad wanted to go. Mom didn't. She wanted to stay in Wichita, Kansas. And so rather than split the family up and everything, Dad he did not go to Seattle, but he would have had a very good job.
Yes.
It would have really helped the family.
I guess he made a small fortune off of engineering in World War II anyway.
Developing things.
You guys had a pretty good sized house there. I
And
remember.
it
It
was
was
a
2-story. How many bedrooms does that house have?
About 6.
About 6. I thought it had more. Yeah,
Well, he didn't have all the kids by then.
Right.
He worked on that later.
I see. How many kids were in your household?
Born to the family, let's see.
Yeah.
Bill, Lyndon, Roger, Max. Kathy, she's a female baby in the 50s. So they really didn't have, they had no
Right.
knowledge of any of this.
Yeah, so they just confided mostly in you now. Yeah, I remember you're with your aunt and you're talking about how he clipped the wings on a fly so that when the general came through to
Yeah.
do an inspection, the fly was doing a figure eight.
Figure eight.
And they acted like, that's no big deal, the fly doing a figure eight, And your aunt had remembered hearing that story from your father.
Yeah. The generals were quite perplexed. I mean, the generals there were going, what in the fuck's wrong with these flies? And Dad's over there with his friend Charlie Arbuckle, and they had these little tiny scissors or razor blades and stuff, and they knew just how much to do it to make them go in a figure eight. And they'd flip upside down, come back right side up. And these generals are sitting there,